and morality. Because originally when the law is lined up with morality, when the law is simply a reflection of morality, in other words, it's just for the protection of liberty, life, liberty, property. As he puts it, it's for the banning of injustice from society, and thereby the creation of justice through the banning of injustice. Then you have a coinciding of law and morality, and the moral world makes sense to people. It's easy to grasp, and people can basically obey and comply by the law by respecting other persons. And it's more or less simple. It's really not that complicated. Philosophers come along and make it complicated, but it's not really complicated. And people can understand it. People don't need to be reading law books and economics books. They can live their lives and generally respect other people's boundaries, and it's fine. They don't, right? They don't need to become PhDs in order to know how to live a moral life and get along with their neighbors. It's simple. It's rather simple. But when the law gets perverted, and laws now turn against the things it originally emerged to protect, confusion is introduced. Now it's not so simple. Where are the lines? The law is taking from people and giving to other people. It's not respecting property. It's shifting property from those who have produced it to those who haven't produced it. And then it introduces moral ambiguity, moral confusion, because things don't line up anymore. And then it becomes, as Ayn Rand would say, deuces wild. Okay? And now anything can be, because there's no sense in it any longer. So we don't know what will be okay tomorrow. Tomorrow the government may decide to increase taxes to the top rate to, who knows, 60%, 70%. And that's considered lawful, with quotations around it. And people don't have a basis to say that's wrong, because for so long the law has been moving people's property around and giving to other people anyway. The whole system has been confused and undermined. And this is what Bastiat was, of course, warning against in his own time. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, he sees two motives behind this perversion of law. One, of course, is simple perverse kind of greed, not the kind of greed that was being referred to before, where you want a lot of money so you can make something that people want to buy, and then you get wealthy doing that. That's a good thing. But then there's another kind of greed that relies on exploitation of people. In other words, I don't want to work, so I'll just loot people who do work. That's an very old motive. I believe that's how states get formed, through conquest, and an attempt to harness the productive power of working people of all kinds. And when I say working people, of course, I also mean business owners, what we call capitalists, entrepreneurs. I don't just mean employees in the way Marx did. And you take from them, and that way you don't have to work. And this is what ruling classes, this is what kings and royal families and lords and noblemen have done for a very long time. And then when the parts of the world became democratized, we just get a new class of exploiters. They may have to get elected some way rather than inherit their office, but they behave basically like earlier generations of rulers. And then, of course, Bastiat points out that as democracy becomes more widespread and the vote, suffrage is extended, people who have been exploited by this system decide that, hey, I can get in on it. I can get some of the action. I can vote to get some things taken away from other people for myself. And he says at first they may just do this to get even, right? They want to get back some of the stuff that's been taken from them, but it goes beyond that until the people realize, hey, not only can I sort of get back something that was taken from me, this is a pretty good system after all. I can just keep taking from productive people. So what democracy did was open up, in effect, open up the ruling class and let almost anybody have a shot at it to get some of the goodies. Well, this is obviously a perverse system, and this is where we get Bastiat's definition of the state as that great fiction by which everybody tries to live at the expense of everyone else. And of course, such a thing is not sustainable by definition. It seems like anybody with common sense, once you explain this, will realize that this is the height of unsustainability. If we all imagine people in a circle, each with a hand in the pocket of the person to his right, going around the circle, this system is not going to last very long. And we may have some success if we try to explain it to people this way. I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do, but it's certainly worth a try because there's a purity and a common sense in the way Bastiat explained these things that we shouldn't yet give up on and keep trying to explain this to people. I realize it's, people have been systematically indoctrinated through public schools and the media over the years, certainly true in the United States, where they believe, although I'll say something in a moment about that, where they believe that is the proper way and that somehow wealth can be created through legal plunder. I still think if we explain this clearly, we can begin to make some progress. Speaking for the United States now, apparently I came off a little pessimistic in my remarks earlier, and I didn't really so much intend that as a short-term pessimism. But in the U.S., we see some glimmer, some hope in these what's known as the Tea Parties. I don't know if you've been following this on the news. I'm sure it's on the news because people have mentioned it to me here. But I think we should look on this as the beginning of something, something to be optimistic about. It's not highly articulated. Most of the people who are coming to meetings and going to demonstrations are not reading, unfortunately not even reading this, although we should go to these demonstrations and hand out copies of the law. So they can't yet give an intelligent talk citing the theory and the history which would make their case. It's more gut level at this point. But at the gut level, we're seeing some good, hard common sense. They're worried about the growth of the U.S. government, the size of the deficit, how it's going to grow as far as the eye can see, trillions of dollars, a couple of $1 trillion a year for as far as the eye can see. They're worried about big companies and banks getting bailed out, that companies that fail, they don't like the idea that companies that fail get saved by the taxpayers. They don't like that the talk in the U.S. is more and more bureaucratic decision-making over something as personal as medical care. This is something to be excited about. There's a gut-level reaction to this. I mean, I don't know that we actually saw this coming when this began in 2008 at some point, before Obama was even elected, and before the primaries were over. Ron Paul, of course, helped to stimulate this because he did get on television and was interviewed and was able to say these things. But the point is, it clicked with people. People who had never heard of Fee or never heard of Bastiat, never read anything, wouldn't know who Mises was. If you said Austrian economics, they might say, why are you talking about Austria? We live in the United States. What do we care about Austrian economics for? The people who would say that, when they heard Ron Paul's ideas and other people making these points, something clicked or something hit them in the gut. Saying, you know what? Yes, there's something that's true. There's something wrong with what's happening here. And it's the beginning of something. So there is reason to be optimistic that a Bastiat type appeal to the broad mass of people can hold some hope for change. And I think it's certainly worth a try. No time to give up as far as I'm concerned on that sort of strategy. Now, Bastiat, I don't think, would be terribly surprised by the things that are going on. He'd be very disappointed. He writes about the United States at the end of his book, and he points out, of course, the two very serious contradictions in the United States at that time: slavery, of course, which is the big one, and also protectionism. And of course, he thinks those are the two great contradictions. And he was right about that. Those were, you could find some other ones, but anything else was small compared to slavery first and the tariff, protectionism second. Unfortunately, if he were to come back today, I think he would have to cry at how the United States turned out, at least at this point. He might be hopeful that things could change, but he probably thought there was so much potential there, and it would be such a shining example to the rest of the world as soon as it got rid of these two things,